January 897. Rome. Inside the Basilica of St. John Lateran, church officials gather for a trial. But this isn't a normal trial. The defendant sits on a throne, dressed in full papal robes. He doesn't move. He doesn't speak. He can't. He's been dead for 9 months. This is the Cadaver Synod, the day Pope Stephen VI put a corpse on trial. And what happens next is so disturbing that it will haunt the Catholic Church for over 1,000 years. The dead man on trial is Pope Formosus. 9 months earlier, he died peacefully after 5 years as Pope. He was buried with honor in St. Peter's Basilica, and that should have been the end of his story. But in medieval Rome, death doesn't always mean peace. Political enemies don't forget. And the new Pope, Stephen VI, has a score to settle. Stephen orders Formosus's tomb opened. The corpse is dragged out, still wearing his burial clothes. Workers strip the rotting body and redress it in full papal vestments, the same robes Formosus wore when he was alive. They prop the corpse on a throne in the courtroom. A young deacon is assigned to speak for the dead pope. He's terrified. The room fills with bishops, cardinals, and church officials. Everyone knows this is wrong, but nobody dares object. Pope Stephen enters and the trial begins. He doesn't waste time. He screams at the corpse. "When you were Bishop of Porto, why did you usurp the universal Roman see with such ambition?" The dead pope obviously doesn't answer. The teenage deacon stammers out weak defenses, but Stephen cuts him off every time. This isn't a trial. It's a performance. The charges are clear. Formosus is accused of perjury, of illegally becoming pope while still serving as bishop of another city, and of breaking church law. These are serious accusations. But the real reason for this trial runs much deeper. To understand why Stephen is doing this, we need to go back a few years. Formosus wasn't always pope. In the 870s, he was a powerful bishop and diplomat. He was so successful in Bulgaria that the Bulgarian prince wanted him as archbishop. Pope John VIII said no. Formosus pushed back. John VIII didn't like that. In 876, the Pope excommunicated Formosus and banished him from Rome. He accused him of conspiring with enemies and abandoning his diocese. Formosus was forced to swear he would never return to Rome and never seek church office again. But after John VIII died, everything changed. The new Pope, Marinus I, lifted the excommunication in 883 and restored Formosus to his position as Bishop of Porto. 8 years later, in 891, Formosus was elected Pope. The oath he swore to John VIII? Ignored. Formosus became the most powerful man in the Catholic Church. His papacy wasn't peaceful. Italy in the 890s was a war zone. Noble families fought for control. Kings and emperors rose and fell. And the Pope was caught in the middle. Formosus made a dangerous political move. He crowned Lambert of Spoleto as Holy Roman Emperor in 892. Lambert's family, the Spoletans, were one of the most powerful dynasties in Italy. They expected Formosus's loyalty. They didn't get it. In 893, Formosus got nervous. Lambert's father, Guy III of Spoleto, was becoming too aggressive. Formosus didn't trust him. So he did something drastic. He invited Arnulf of Carinthia, a rival king from the north, to invade Italy. Arnulf came down with an army, but the invasion failed. Guy III died shortly after. Formosus should have stopped. He didn't. In 895, he invited Arnulf again. This time, Arnulf succeeded. He marched into Rome in 896, and Formosus crowned him Holy Roman Emperor, betraying Lambert completely. The Spoletans were furious. But before they could retaliate, both Arnulf and Formosus died within months of each other in 896. Formosus's successor, Pope Boniface VI, died after just 2 weeks. Then Stephen VI became pope. And the Spoletans saw their chance for revenge. Lambert and his mother, Empress Agiltrude, marched into Rome. They controlled the city. They controlled Stephen. And they wanted Formosus destroyed, even in death. Back in the courtroom, Stephen is still screaming at the corpse. The accusations keep coming. Formosus broke his oath. He illegally held 2 bishoprics at once. He betrayed the church. The young deacon tries to defend him, but Stephen won't listen. The outcome was decided before the trial even started. After hours of this grotesque performance, the verdict is announced. Guilty. All of it. Formosus is found guilty of every charge. The punishment is immediate and brutal. All of Formosus's acts as pope are declared null and void. Every bishop he ordained, every priest he appointed, every decision he made over 5 years is erased. Hundreds of clergy across Europe suddenly find their positions invalid. The church is thrown into chaos. But Stephen isn't done. He orders the corpse stripped of its papal robes. Workers tear the vestments off the decaying body. Then Stephen gives the order that shocks everyone in the room. 3 fingers of Formosus's right hand, the fingers he used to give blessings and perform sacraments, are cut off. The mutilated corpse is dressed in rags, the clothes of a common criminal. Then it's dragged out of the basilica and buried in a pauper's grave outside the city walls. Even that isn't enough. A few days later, Stephen orders the body dug up again. It's thrown into the Tiber River, the same river used to dispose of executed criminals. The body sinks into the muddy water and disappears. Stephen has won. Formosus is disgraced, his legacy destroyed, his body desecrated. But the story doesn't end there. Legend says a monk pulled Formosus's body from the river the next day. Others say it was a fisherman. Either way, the corpse was recovered and quietly buried in a monastery. And then the miracles started. People claimed the waterlogged, rotting corpse of Formosus was performing miracles. The rumors spread across Rome. Public opinion turned violently against Stephen. The people who had stayed silent during the trial now spoke up. The Cadaver Synod wasn't justice. It was madness. It was an abomination. Within months, riots broke out. A mob stormed the Lateran palace and dragged Stephen VI out of his chambers. He was thrown into prison. In August 897, just months after the trial, Stephen was strangled to death in his cell. His reign was over. The papacy fell into chaos. His successor, Pope Formosus, lasted 4 months. The next pope, Theodore II, reigned for only 20 days. But in that short time, Theodore did something important. He ordered Formosus's body recovered from the monastery where it had been hidden. He declared the Cadaver Synod invalid. In December 897, Pope Theodore held a new synod. This one rehabilitated Formosus. His acts as pope were reinstated. His ordinations were declared valid. And his body was reburied in St. Peter's Basilica with full honors, dressed in papal vestments once again. The next pope, John IX, went even further. In 898, he convened 2 synods, one in Rome and one in Ravenna. Both condemned the Cadaver Synod. John declared that no pope could ever be put on trial after death again. The church tried to bury the scandal and move on. But the damage was done. The Cadaver Synod exposed just how corrupt and unstable the papacy had become. This period from the mid-800s to the mid-900s is sometimes called the Iron Age of the papacy. It wasn't a time of spiritual leadership. It was a time of violence, political manipulation, and constant power struggles. Between 872 and 965, there were 24 popes. Between 896 and 904, the papacy changed hands almost every year. Some popes were murdered. Some were imprisoned. Some were overthrown by rival factions. The Cadaver Synod stands out even in this chaotic era. It's one of the most bizarre and disturbing events in church history. Historians have debated for centuries why Stephen did it. Some say it was revenge orchestrated by Lambert and the Spolatans. Others say Stephen was desperate to legitimize his own papacy. He had been appointed bishop by Formosus while still holding another position. If Formosus's papacy was invalid, then Stephen's appointment was invalid too. By destroying Formosus, Stephen may have been trying to erase his own illegal rise to power. Recent scholarship suggests Stephen was acting out of fear. He wasn't a strong leader. He was a puppet controlled by the Spolatans. They wanted Formosus humiliated, and Stephen had no choice but to comply. Whether it was revenge, desperation, or fear, the result was the same. A dead man was put on trial, convicted, mutilated, and thrown into a river. And the man who ordered it was strangled in prison less than a year later. The Cadaver Synod is a reminder of how dark and violent medieval politics could be. It's a story of power betrayal and revenge that went so far beyond reason that even people in the 9th century were horrified. No pope has ever taken the name Formosus since. The name is cursed, a reminder of the trial that should never have happened. Today, you can visit St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Formosus is buried there, finally at rest after being exhumed, tried, mutilated, thrown in a river, and reburied multiple times. His story is largely forgotten by most people. But for historians, the Cadaver Synod remains one of the strangest and most disturbing episodes in the history of the Catholic Church. A dead pope on trial. A living pope screaming at a corpse. And a church so broken that even death couldn't protect you from your enemies. That's the legacy of the Cadaver Synod. The day the church put a dead man on trial and proved that in medieval Rome, not even the grave could keep you safe.